How are you, Gautam?
Good afternoon. Very good, sir.
You're getting my voice across?
Yes, loud and clear.
So nice to have you as the youngest facade consultant who's an international man now based in India. So welcome viewers, welcome ladies and gentlemen, architects, facade consultants, developers, friends, fabricators the world over. We have Gautam Bhasin with us today from Inhabit. The young man is across and is going to talk to us today on life in facades, life beyond facades and more. And let's hear what he has to say. So, Gautam, before we go more and before I introduce you to the rest of the world, which everybody knows, let me tell you a little bit of what I know about Gautam and his story with Inhabit. Inhabit is a very large organization with 19 offices world over, based out of, primarily in Europe. They have offices in London. They have offices, 5 offices in China, 4 offices in Australia, Bangkok, Indonesia, Paris, Dubai, Doha, they're everywhere. And when they wanted to come to India, they got this young man called Gautam Bhasin. Gautam Bhasin, an architect out of India who was based with them. And he'll tell you his story. And we'll go more ahead and talk about him as we flow this lovely afternoon and we talk to him. So, Gautam, over to you, my friend. Tell us something about yourself and where you start, because I'd rather talk to you a lot of technical stuff than talk to you. Stop talking all the lovely things in your life.
Right. Well, good that we've got this opportunity to be almost face to face. We normally don't get to talk about life in general. So, great opportunity and good afternoon, everyone. I think, like most other people, I too had a very humble origin, humble beginnings. I was born in a small town in Madhya Pradesh called Jabalpur. My father had a banking job, so that made me travel all around the country. And then I think from my early schooling days, we've been settled in Mumbai. Life just happened, architecture happened out of natural selection where, I was not going to be a good doctor. So, engineering came in quite naturally. And that's where architecture sort of fell into place with my drawing skills. Just after finishing graduation and after having worked for a local architectural firm here in Mumbai, you hit a quarter life crisis. And facade doesn't happen naturally to anyone. Nobody decides or plans that I will get into facades. So my story was also sort of a very beautiful accident where at the end of my 3rd or 4th year of being a practicing architect, I was asking myself a question, okay, should I keep doing this for the rest of my life? Become a senior architect, become an associate, become a senior associate, and then potentially a design principal, and then call it off and retire and hang my shoes. I said, no, I maybe want to be a little more specific with my direction. And right through architecture school days, the scale of design I was comfortable with was smaller objects. Like you asked me to design a city, I would just fall flat. But you asked me to design a door handle, I would just excel at it. I would just come out with flying colors. So which college teaches you door designing? Obviously, there's no college that teaches you door handles. You can get into product designing, industrial designing. So I applied to a handful of colleges, got accepted with all of them, but that was just out of frustration. I wanted to apply and then see what happens. And then I got an opportunity to start with a facade engineering firm, Arab, as we all know. Yeah, correct. And at that point, I didn't know who the company was. I didn't know what facade engineering is really. All I know is you put some glass on the building and then, you call it a facade. It's a French word, and then that's all. So a close friend of mine said, just give it a shot. Just try. Just pack your bags and go. If nothing works out, Singapore is a beautiful place. You can have nice six-month long vacation. You can travel around and then say, sorry, it's not working out. Pack your bags and come back. And it's been, I think, close to 13 years. I have never packed my bags, and I've been with facades, got to work with some wonderful people, got to work with some wonderful companies and people, good people like yourself. So that's sort of my story in a nutshell. And it's been, I think, over a decade and a half of professional career spanning between architecture and facade.
So you didn't know when you went into Arup Façade in Singapore that they were the godfather, godmother, they were the gods of the world.
Yeah.
In facade engineering.
True.
Very interesting. So this is where we come back to the universe, the law of karma, the law of the world, the accidental accidents that happen, what I call soul connections that take you from one to there. So, as an architect, did you work in India in a facade firm, or you went straight away into only when you got into facade was when you went to Singapore?
I got into facade with Arabs in Singapore.
And that was in which year?
That was this was I think early 2008.
And then you migrated, and then you moved and you to greener pastures to Inhabit, is it? Later on.
Yeah. So again, I think that journey was also quite interesting. First moving to Arab in 2008, worked on a lot of projects in India, then eventually got on to work on a lot of projects in Southeast Asia. And then I got married in 2012, and both me and my wife were sort of looking for a nice big shake-up, saying, okay, let's change our environment a little. And it's got a funny story. 2012, we were holidaying in Hong Kong, and I love Hong Kong as a place because I'm from Mumbai, and Mumbai has this sort of energy that Hong Kong offers you. So
see some pictures of your life, and and how do we start? Something about where you began and what you look like and what fun you had in life till we go ahead with the viewers.
Yeah. So well, I'll let you.
We'll zoom on to some pictures and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. So, oh wow, this is really interesting. So this is again my early days of nomadic life, where you just basically stuff some t-shirts and some shorts in a backpack and start moving around. I think this is somewhere. I don't recall exactly. I think this is either Koh Samui or Krabi, where you have a lagoon in a mountain where you basically climb the rocks down with no support, no assistance. And as my picture shows, I think I'm much younger and a little more foolish back in the days. So
it also gives me an idea that you love glassful all over.
Yeah, well, on hindsight, I think it does look like rockpool, right?
Rockpool and glassful. Okay, another picture soon coming up.
Yeah, well, I think I really utilized the time. As my friend said, take it as a big holiday. I was like, fine, let's just try and explore the region. This was a PADI open water diving course that I had to come back from 2 days prematurely, but I enjoyed that quite thoroughly. When I get a little time, I might want to go back to the seas again. Hopefully soon again. I don't know when we'll be able to hit the tourist circuit again, but. Yeah, so that was interesting.
We have some more pictures.
Yeah, and again, more from backpacking. I mean, this is across North Vietnam, basically Hanoi, all the way along the popular railway tour. Nothing but a backpack and a lonely planet and some cash in hand. Basically, just go out there, eat what you can, and just see the world as you can.
Great.
So, yeah, I mean, that was sort of my early days of having moved out of India and then having experienced the world around me a little better.
We'll move some faster. Now this is your family picture.
Yeah, and then obviously got settled and marriage happened and then child happened in 2016 and this is what we look like right now. We've got again. This year, birthdays have been strictly indoors, so this is what our weekends look like. Pretty much goofing around, doing things that we like, and trying to be a pain in each other's asses.
Lovely family. We go faster now till we get to more. Oh, this is shop talk coming up now.
Right. Okay.
So we go into some shop talk now, and picture just to show you before we go further.
Some more quick family stuff. Love traveling. My son is my favorite travel buddy, basically, and I've started discovering the joy of road trips. Wherever in the world we go, we decide to rent a car and basically drive around. This is from Tuscany and Provence. We basically drove for about 1,200 kilometers over 7.5 days.
Super.
So yeah, I mean that's basically us and our little travel adventures while we could still travel.
Super. So I mean, when we come back and talk now about Inhabit and we talk about your story and you were there, that means from 2013. So ladies and gentlemen, this young man has been with Inhabit since the last 7 years and he's looked into the markets of Singapore, Far East, Macau, Indonesia, Philippines, Hong Kong, and he moved into India, I think about 4 years ago in 2017. Can you tell us something about your projects, your journey, your life, your story, your complexities, till we go into our shop talk a little later? and some complex projects that you worked on?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting how diverse working can be in different countries, different environments, the challenges of design, the challenges of procurement and construction, and how that changes with each city you switch to or each city you move to. I was very, very fortunate to have worked on some of the really challenging projects that are out there, ranging from really small and complex projects to super tall and complex projects, and you gradually graduate to bigger and bigger and better buildings.
Can you talk about this project?
Yeah, interestingly, this is, I think, the tallest building in the southern hemisphere as being planned. This is about 523 meters tall. And it's basically a complex of 4 buildings. So you have the centerpiece, which is the tower, and then you have 4 other buildings, which basically form a large complex and ancillary spaces. The complexity is it looks quite simple like a spire, but then the top to 1/3 of the building is basically doubly curved, so it's just leaning backwards. And that itself is about 123 meters.
Wow.
And that 123 meters is like a building by itself in Mumbai scale. And that sits on top of another building, which is 350 meters. So we're talking about very, very tall.
When you worked on this, was it with Arup or with Inhabit?
This was with Inhabit.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's the complexity. So this is what is happening about 500 odd meters up in the air. You've got wind turbines, you've got sort of doubly curved cladding panels, you've got these fluted or fins that open up. What we used to call cleft glazing, which brings the light. You've got fins, unitizing happening on a steel structure. So obviously a lot of challenges there. And, we got to work with some really, really sharp consultants, some really, really sharp architects. This was SOM out of New York. And it was the very first time I think we got to work with blast mitigation consultants who would tell you that what if a bomb goes off 5 meters off your building, how does your facade react to it and how do you design for it? So some really interesting challenges, some really interesting aspects of designing facades that we would not consider.
We'll come back to that later about designing and what kind of challenges you had, but can we look at a few more pictures? Then we'll go into some nice hard-hitting questions to a man like you. I have to call you Gautam sir after seeing that picture. After seeing that picture, you're Gautam sir now. Tell me something about this building called Astra.
Here's another one. This is Menara Astra in Indonesia, in Jakarta. This was, I think, the first project I started off with. I got off the plane in Hong Kong, and I think I was literally on the drawing board the next day trying to figure out what to do with this facade. This is with a Japanese architect called Nikken Sakai, and the curtain wall looks quite simple. On an onset, it's basically, it's got a 6.5 meter cantilever on one end, and then that wraps over and becomes a double helix. So this is what will show you the complexity in the crown. So crown has a peeling back effect. So it basically peels back on both sides and becomes like a helix. So it's got warping happening in glass. So there's coal bending being explored. There's warpage inside being explored.
Okay, just a minute. If we stay on this picture, how long does it take to get a building like this completed from the day you are appointed till the day of handover in a country like, let's say, Jakarta or Indonesia?
With involvement of good international consultants, with involvement of some good international investors who know exactly how the building should be designed and how it should be handed over. It took us about 3.5 years to finish this from scratch to finish.
That's a tough call.
It is.
It's a tough call considering where you're sitting in India. We'll come back to that and what you're doing here later. Because this is a very challenging assignment, very, very challenging. Yeah. 3.5 years is not even 42 months. Take 43, 45 months to get a project completed. And here we cry for silicon, hardware, rubber, gasket, 6 pieces of glass from a toughened processing company. That takes you, God knows, 3.5 days or 5 days to come. Let's go to the next picture.
Not a high rise, not a very extraordinary looking building, but then this is a project which I'm specifically proud of. This is Unilever's headquarters, again, Indonesia. And this building, I think from the day we stepped into the room, calling it a kickoff meeting, to the soft opening, we finished it all just shy of 3 years. So the entire facade was up, the interiors were up. They really wanted it up by that date, so we had to literally work backwards to plan the program around for them. And we basically did facades, we did BMU, we did lighting, we did acoustics. We even got this building a Green Mark Gold Plus rating.
In how much time? In how much time? Tell that to the viewers. In how much time?
36 months flat.
And in which country?
Indonesia, Jakarta. And this is very, very similar. I mean, the market is as nascent. The market is as new to all these sort of developments. They don't know and understand what good curtain wall solution is. But if you have good people involved, I think they can really bring that sensibility to the table, who can then push for the right solution.
Okay, let me interrupt you. I think in India also there are a lot of good companies, there are a lot of good people, there are a lot of good companies, there are a lot of good financiers, a lot of good investors, a lot of good designs, and architects, without naming them on this forum, number of them, including all the international. Why doesn't it happen here? You want to say something on that? That's the first question. Why doesn't it happen here?
I think in my experience, if you really want it built, you have to take a sincere call and then move with it. Sometimes, and it's always tempting to sort of relook at your decisions, see if there's some change that we can bring about, and that really holds the project again and again and again and again. And then restarting it takes a lot of momentum, a lot of effort. So I think in this case, people really wanted to say, okay, here are my 4 options. I think option 3 is the best. Let's take that and run with it. And we're not looking back.
You want me to give you a practical answer from my viewpoint?
Sure.
You take a pair of shoes, and take a pair of shoes which have got laces. Okay? And you've got these eyelids on top of them. You've got 5 on the left and 5 on the right. And your lace has to go through all 10 of them in a systematic manner. Okay? In India, 2 of them are blocked when you're trying to do a facade. Either the facade contractor goofs up, or either the facade raw material supplier goofs up in terms of the extrusion, or the glass fellow goofs up, or hardware guy goofs up, or by itself the design is complex, or the civil contractor goofs up, or invariably there's a material cash flow problem. Then there's the government interference at some place.
Yeah.
So I think something goes wrong here. So that puja part, that temple, that religion, nothing works here. I think all forces need to come together. That's what happened.
That is so true. I think clarity in decision is another thing, right? I mean, the regulations are very unclear. You need like a specialist to decipher how building regulations work for you. But in these countries, you have it all written in black and white. It's either this way or that way. You follow it or you don't follow it. So I think it's a clarity in decision making, both from the parties who are involved, also the people who are advisors should give very clear advice, so the client can make an informed decision on day 1, and then day 2 he doesn't have to revisit day 1 to look at that decision again.
Super. Now let's look at another picture, another photograph.
So yeah, same project, again super complex. This is a view from the inside. You'll start seeing those complicated skylights along with lighting integration. And we did some bridge engineering here as well, of all these bridges sort of crisscrossing through the courtyard, through the atrium space. Again, very, very, very beautiful office space. Still extremely proud of it. We also did a lot of lighting integration in the facade. So all these nosings will have sort of linear lights which gradually come out as the sun sets, and then you have the interior lights spilling out with all the features coming out alive.
Interesting. Interesting. Any more to show, or we go ahead?
I think let's move. There'll be more.
All right. Coming back to all that you worked on, all of these must be unitized systems primarily. These particular buildings.
Yes, these particular.
Coming back to unitized systems and their complexity. Okay. You want to share with the viewers of how complex you worked on and what type of mullion systems you worked on, or whether the standard 70 by 110, what are the largest depth flange you went for, and how complex were they, or were they all 3 barrier, 4 barrier, 5 barrier, double walled? Can you share something on that and throw some light on it?
I think
more as a consultant than as anything else, that what is the most practical thing for this country right now? Talk in terms of India.
I think
India.
In terms of building, I always look at it as the more manufacturability you have on the building, the better it is. The better control you have in the factory, the better results you get with the end product. So unitizing that way definitely is very, very advantageous. But I think a lot of people do push for unitizing, do market unitizing sometimes in the wrong place, where you have a 2-floor building with massive balconies projecting out in and out. But the idea is to have a building where you don't have to goof around too much on the site, where you have a product that comes in and gets locked in. In terms of choice of system, we typically work with the male-female system. People call it European, people call it American or whatever. I call it the Indian male-female system, because it has to have some tropical values to it. It has to deal with, we don't have a lot of condensation problems which Europe suffers or America suffers, but we have a lot of drainage issues that we need to. Water is our biggest enemy here. People hate when their buildings leak. So having to make sure that everything is drained out as efficiently, as quickly as possible, I think that's been our number one design driver in identifying unitized systems. So I think all these buildings sit in tropical countries, tropical climates, Indonesia being one, Singapore being one, Mumbai being one. So water is our number one criteria when we design for it. No surface should have any water for more than a few seconds. It should be able to drain itself out.
You ever witnessed a test, or you ever gone to a test where, we talked on AMA standards and we've done so much of testing world over, where you've done any destructive testing in terms of very large unitized panels?
No.
Coming back to that, therefore, all that when we go to a test rig is so regimented, is so structured, everything is so perfect, from silicon to bonding to sealing to putting the chamber. Still in India, when we come down to doing the work, is not done the same way. How do you as a facade consultant counter attack, or how do you actually go back to combat that issue?
With testing rigs, you mean?
Ensuring that you get the right product for your owner, for your developer who's appointed you. Because I've been noticing, people go here, okay, I mean, cross my fingers, touch my heart, touch my soul. Our buildings don't leak at Aluplex, so we know what we're talking about. I'm not saying somebody else's leaks, but that is because we worry about every corner, every joint, every detail. And if every particular square inch, square foot, square meter of the glazing wall, which you've erected, all right, has to be identical to what you created at the test chamber. Now, I've been noticing people go around doing work, they don't worry about the gaps between the masonry and the starter mullion. They don't worry about the end when it comes in, at the rise. They don't worry about the top. They leave all the open ends. At times, they even don't put in the gasket between the male mullion and the female mullion. I'm telling you seriously. Sometimes I wish I'm on the other side. But I think time will come when one day I will have to get out and be the other side dawn like you are. Right now, most people are. But how do you counterattack, or how do you combat this issue with the facade fabricators in ensuring that they give an absolutely foolproof, identical product like they've created at the test rig?
Well, I think it's...
Or are we going to go ahead from here? That's my question.
Fair question, and I think you partly answered that in your question as well. It all starts with the drawing board. We need to make sure that our expectations are reasonable with the contractor, so we draw it out with utmost clarity, so that when you get our intent drawings, you know exactly what is needed in the system. Now, obviously, you may use that and create a different symphony out of it, but then the base remains the same, and then working on the drawings first before even it gets to a chamber, because by the time it gets to a chamber, it may be too late to modify any design. So I think the more time we spend, the more sensible time we spend engineering and detailing the right product on the drawing board, I think that will translate to a much better success while you get to the testing rig, and then potentially when you start installing it on the site as well.
Coming back to that and continuing from where you stopped right now, I think it also is a question of incorporating the right hardware. You want to say something on it, on the dependency of the foreign hardware, more so now with the current big talk about China hardware in inverted commas?
Hardware is make and break, right? You can put together a good aluminium frame with glass inside, which complies with your values, gives you the shading coefficient. But if your window stops opening after 6 months, it's of zero value to anyone. So I think hardware is all about performance. Hardware is all about finesse. You can deal with 1.5 millimeter tolerances in your fabrication, your assembly, and all those things. But a micron of error in the manufacturing of your hardware can lead to a bigger headache 6 months down the line. I think while the conversation is all very valid in the patriotic terms that we should try and manufacture as much as possible in-house, but I think we are not there yet. We would love to be there, where Europe is, where Italy is, where the Swiss are, but I think we still have years of work in front of us to get to that point.
Absolutely. I think, the best hardware today, which, comes from Europe, not, from Italy, which you rightly said, and without taking names, and there's so many of them. The best spiders come from China and Taiwan, without saying anything. And there's no silicon better than what comes from GE or Dow Corning when it comes back from US. And I think we take it from there. And having said that, we have to live with this fact that made in local or make in India is going to be a phenomenon by itself over a period of time. Having said that, there are a lot of good hardware companies in India which are there, which make good what you call 4-bar hinges and good handles and good optimal hardware. But I think the marketing and even though the product is good, the pricing has to be very competitive in today's world. Otherwise, the owner is not going to come around to say yes, and specifiers like you have to start incorporating it in time to come. Okay, let's move on to another picture altogether. We spoke about unitized systems, complex facades. Can we move into the unitized systems more into complex facades with GFRC and stone? I understand you as an individual have got a very big soft corner for GFRC, or rather, the stone element in spandrels and the groove lines that you work on. Can you talk a little about that, please?
Well, I'm an architect by training, so obviously I love if there's somebody who's introducing new materials to facades. I don't have a soft corner per se, but I think we have outdone glass as a material. And it's not just purely GFRC panels going on walls. I think we've also incorporated very complex castings, stones in aluminium unitized curtain wall, where we've basically thrown in panels that actually are integrated in unitizing as well. I think it's end of the day, it's about trying to make your building stand out. And I'll put on the architect's hat for a few seconds. I think it's basically about also an expression that the owner or the investor is comfortable with. So I think at the end of the day, it's our duty to make it work. And if it requires X material, we have to bring it on board, engineer it, design it correctly, and then put it on the building.
No, when we talked about all this complexity, there's also this new funda, which we call the new fundamental we're all talking about now, is passive facades. We're working at Aluplex on a project where we put these passive ventilators across just above the spandrel, and it's doing wonders for people who are smoking rooms, and smoking areas and other areas. You want to say something on that kind of facade, or on those type of facades you worked all over the world with, and share with people the idea of how it's going to come into this country in time to come?
I think it is definitely going to be the future. We all are excited about buildings that move, pins that flip around, that are electrically operated. But I think that's to an extent very gimmicky, and that's in my opinion. If somebody has the money for it, somebody wants to put it on the building, I don't mind designing it. But I think passive design is the essence, where you take wind into account and capitalize on it. So if you're in a high rise where you will have high winds, you introduce a passive ventilator like you suggested, or what you've used in a project, and then that allows you clean air changes every couple of hours, without you having to breathe the same recycled air that's air conditioned thrown back at you. Similarly, I think just trying to capitalize on solar orientation, so you may have better sun in some direction and not so much in the other direction. So trying to choose your glass correctly, trying to introduce some shading onto your facade. So I think just having some basic environmental orientation towards design, just being a little sensitive about where your building is, which way it is looking, and then trying to choose your materials and designs and details accordingly. I think that will be, it should be now. It shouldn't be the future. It should be now. Like, we should be designing buildings like that now.
I must take you on a tangent, or I must take all the viewers on a tangent. It's so interesting talking to all the facade consultants who come on this show, unmasking the facade by the Zach world of facades. But I think it's very complimentary, which I must say these few complimentary words to good friend Gautam, good facade consultant Gautam. I'm trying to put you in the box. I'm trying to ask you questions, but you have answers for everything. You look like the dark horse of facade consultancy in India. Or like we say in Indian dialect, chupa rustum of the industry. You have an answer for everything. Coming back to passive facades, and you want to talk something about photovoltaic cells that you used in spandrel panels? That is still that's my soft spot. So I'm going to come back on that.
Okay.
I personally feel that time will come, like when we go back in 1995 when we introduced, structural glazing and unitized glazing in this country. And I still feel that time will come. Like today now you see every building around with unitized systems. I find it ironically funny, ironically stupid, ironically not accepted in my frame of mind, because you go to a construction site where you see certain people and certain fabricators actually taking male, female, mullion, transom, head sill and glazing them on site, including of very large civil contractors as subcontracting them. So that doesn't work in our site because we like to utilize, conveyor lines and the tables and things like that. So I think similarly time will come where every second facade, 5 to 7 years, India takes everything very fast. Take the mobile phone, take the air-conditioned taxi that came in, take the way Ola and Uber took over completely. I mean, there was no end. Once we take over on something, then we don't stop. Take the way Amazon and Flipkart has taken over. Take the way our good friend Mr. Mukesh Ambani has now taken Zoom into GeoMeet. And before you know, Jack Robinson will be all over the world. So I think every third facade in time to come, the spandrel panel, will be a photovoltaic panel. What do you have to say on that?
I would honestly be very happy if I get to see a lot of photovoltaic around. And I think we may be getting there in potentially a decade or maybe shorter.
Decade? I'm not with you.
Okay. No. Let me give you my point of view. I might be hurting you a little with this.
You're not hurting me. I'm talking for the industry.
No. I think the
energy.
The efficiencies still don't make sense. One thing is that, where is the sun? Sun is right up. So if you start putting it on a vertical surface, how much efficiency will you get out of it? That's number one. Second thing is, what is the output that you get with the sort of investment? See, end of the day, somebody's got to invest in it. And unless it's a regulatory requirement that you have to put solar panels, which I think is in Mumbai, that a certain floor amount of floor space has to be reflected into solar panel on your rooftop. So people are putting it. Or if somebody gets extra FSI, and Singapore has a very interesting way of promoting these things, that if you get some new sustainability innovations in your building, you'll get 2 extra floors to build. So that's a nice carrot you dangle in front of developers for them to sort of push these things in the building. So I think unless that comes into play, where there's some monetary gain, I think it will probably take time for it to be on the buildings. But I agree. I can see a future where potentially not just every 5th building, potentially every 2nd or 3rd building having spandrels as crystalline PV.
So it will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
You also got to, just to go on another tangent. It's like saying the Tesla is now in the market. And believe me, I'm going to tell you this. I personally feel in 5 years, there'll be more Teslas in India than anywhere else around. Because Indians are very, very conscious about everything. Yes, money is an issue. But money happens to flow in this country. It just comes in. It comes to the right person, comes to the right people, and, things happen. Okay, let's move one step ahead to another very sensitive, touchy subject in my world, in my mind. I've always felt that facade engineering education is at its primary, at this totally at its primary. What do you think about the people you deal with in terms of facade engineering? Do you think their knowledge is high? Do you think their knowledge is bookish? Do you think it's practical? Of course, there are no books, there are no colleges, but I mean, you've worked world over, so you know where I'm coming from. I mean, you've been all over the world. Can you throw some light on that and related to that on project management and facades? It's 2 questions rolled together.
Yeah, I think if you gave those as a multiple choice question, I would put a 4th choice in saying all of the above. I see a lot of engineers who are purely bookish. They're very, very academic. And then they'll basically say this multiplied by factor of safety of X, and then that's your answer. And I'm saying, no, let's just rethink the design. Let's optimize it a little bit. Then there are some really mavericks who basically will run with it because they've been trained by the right people. I think in the light of not having a formal college, well, there used to be one, which is not open anymore. There are some people who started reviving that education in facades, but it's not worked out very well. In the absence of that, I think working with the right people or finding that right mentor, I think is the best way forward. And I always look for people who have worked with the right people and then take them on board. So they basically become my go-to people for engineering or design solutions.
Super. But no, you answered it all. But my question is that in the present environment in India where you are there today, and you are the right man to answer. Where I'm coming back, you worked on so many types of facades world over. Where does the Indian facade engineer at today level up in terms of international facade engineering?
But difficult to answer again. I mean, there's a lot of engineers who we're working with, especially the ones that we have employed. They have worked with our overseas offices, or they've worked with Façade subcontractor overseas. So they have some sort of reasonable exposure. But I think, like I said, Indian engineers who work with the right people have the right answers. But if they're not, they're solely code reliant or solely academics reliant, saying that here's my answer that's based on what I've learned, but not a thought through answer. So I think I would say the scene is changing. I would not rate them at par with their international colleagues. But I think given that there's a lot of osmosis that's happening, Indian engineers having worked outside, having worked in the Middle East or having worked in Southeast Asia, they're coming back. I think they're coming back with some really sound knowledge of how to structure their approach, how to put their engineering solutions in place.
You want to say something on the project management of facades in India and how well they are managed, well in inverted commas?
Yeah, well, shall we set up, maybe ask Ahad to set up another date, and then we can have a long discussion about project management here.
We'll just touch this a little bit. We'll touch this for like 5-7 minutes.
I feel there's always room for improvement. Partly because I think consultants come onto the table at multiple stages. We have been involved in projects where we weren't the original consultant, where we were brought in later, and then you have a lot of things to shuffle around, push, or reorganize. So I think even if you have somebody on board who's not giving you the right answers, that can become challenging as well. So I think we are struggling, or we are really pushing hard to become more experienced with facades. I think the minute that comes to play, or that comes to fruition, we will be able to manage our projects, manage our facades on site and fabrication a lot better. Currently, I think it's just in multiple ways. I think there are people who think they're doing the right thing, but that may not be the right answer. And
right. This is what I'm coming to. Yeah. India, everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, but it's not the right thing what they're doing. You have said it so blatantly, so elucidly, and so much to the point. I think India is a great country. I think the world is a great place. This is part of our, looking forward. I've been talking to so many consultants world over, and I get this feeling that here in India, people are not ready to even pick up and learn the ABCs of facade engineering, with due respect to everybody. I mean, facade engineering by itself is not a skill, it's knowledge. It's not just acquired. It's something not just ingrained. It's not only in your DNA. It's all rolled into into the whole subject. It's on site management. You can't sit on a drawing board and do it. I'm sure you've gone across here. Yeah. One day you were telling me long time back, I remember before when you were part of Arup and you were in India, that one of the good lessons you learned was when you went on the gondolas externally. You want to talk something about it and tell the viewers about your little escapades and stories into the nuances of what you learned in life.
Well, you have to bruise yourself to understand what pain is, right? So the minute you go out on the gondola, you start looking at safety completely differently, because these things sway. You suddenly start seeing a finished facade from the outside, and you start seeing how things go wrong potentially, and where you can address them at design stage. You experience wind like you've never experienced it before, because that little cage basically just pushes you around, and you're basically holding on to your dear life. So I think I try and spend as much time on shop floor. I've been to, I think, your factory a couple of times. I've been to a few other factories a couple of times. And when you get a full perspective of that last screw going into the facade, then you make that design decision with a lot of thought in it. Like it has to go to the right place for it to function the correct way. Same thing with site execution. Suddenly you realize, the panel design was really great. The architect loved it. It was, 1.8 meters by 3.6 meter panel. But then I see 4 people struggling with it on site. Like, they can't move it from point A to point B. So we then start looking at a different approach of how do you actually make that panel work given that architecturally it's really important, but at the end of the day, it needs to be feasible, practical, and not a pain for somebody else to having to deal with it. So I think gondola being one example, but again, when you start, and sites are great. I mean, you're not a great consultant if you don't love going to site or you don't love going to a factory. You have to get your elbow grease all the time. And that's one thing I'm really missing right now, because all our projects under construction have completely come to a halt. I'm really dying to get to a site where I can literally go and crawl all over. So I think that just gives you a slightly different perspective that you would never get probably when you sit and design. Like, I often talk to my designers and saying, okay, this is something you've drawn, but isko install kaise karega? What will be the sequence? So those small little things, I think, come to you when you start imagining how this will come together.
I'll give you a very, very class example, something that's out of the world, something that will, get the viewers thinking on more than you from where I'm coming. And I remember this instance way back in year 2000, and I was in Kuala Lumpur, and I went to a site through another facade consultant, Peter Lallis, and very, very interesting story. And he went there because he was testing something out on that particular day. This was in KL, this is not in India. And there was a cladding panel which was coming down 12 floors, and there was leakage from inside the building. And the fabricator was yelling that it's not his fault. So they opened up the cladding panel through and through. And behind that, there was a vertical pipe. There was a drainage pipe that was covered. And why was the drainage pipe, leaking? Was very ironical and very funny. Because during the plastering of the building, concrete had poured down into that particular pipe midway and solidified. And water was filling up to the top. And because there was no way to escape, it was escaping from the joinery of the pipe. And the facade contractor was being blamed. And the facade consultant was good enough to say and explain to the owner. And then the only way out was that 3 days later, they brought a fire engine hose. They took it to the roof of the building. They put it down up to the top of the pipe, and they washed water down or hosed it down, and the water drained out from the bottom, and the solidified concrete moved out. They connected the joints with the correct sealant, and lo and presto, behold, the cladding panel was up and there was no leakage. And that's where I'm coming to, that everything you learn on site. This is not written in any Gita of Bhagavad Gita or any Bible of, facade engineering. This is where I'm trying to share with you.
Yeah. Although you don't like to solve, or although you don't like to get to a point where you have problems on site that you solve on site, it's less preferred. You'd rather have no problems. You address them all in design and nothing reaches site. I think the best solutions come on site when you can literally see something that's in front of you. And then the next time when you go back to the design board, you will carry that solution in your head.
And it goes back.
And draw with it. Yeah.
Coming back, I think, to our last one or two questions, which I want to wind up before we come to the end of it. You know so much about curtain walling, so much about facades and skylights, and, etc. All rolled into one. Where do you see now the facades post? I mean, it's a typical question someone would ask you, but I don't want to ask you a typical question. You've been working on big projects in India now. You're working on the towers of Piramal, which is the jobs you're working on. You're working on, Peninsula. You're working on different projects. You're working in Nairobi. You're working all over the world again. My question to you is, seeing this current scenario, where do you think? You think they'll modify the facades? They'll come back besides value engineering? What do you think the developers should do? What is your opinion to him today? Sensitive question, but the question is, what is your opinion to him today?
Well, I think we need to be sensitive about the investment that we're making, because if you overvalue engineer something, that is a solution or that's a product you'll have to spend the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life with. So I think the COVID may wind itself up in whatever, next 6 months or 8 months or 10 months or a year maximum. But I think any decision we need to make today that will reflect on our buildings, I think that needs to be made for the rest of its future as well, not just for this year, so that we can address our financial urgencies or emergencies. I think in terms of, so that sort of addresses the value engineering side of it. I think the buildings will need to be designed differently. Facades, not so much, but I think the building design will change to be more flexible so that, people can be isolated, people can work freely in an environment or, modify it to their needs, etc. And there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of chatter about it, but I think only time will tell how we shape our life around our buildings with the scenario we are in.
So there is a big market according to you.
Where is the big market? India.
Yeah, no, there's a big market in India according to you.
Of course there is. India is poised for growth, and I've always believed in it. And that's the reason why I sort of realized that I should pack up young and come back. Given that there was a lot of experience I was carrying back with me, I think it was a good time for me. Personal and family reasons aside, I wanted my son to grow up in the same environment I've grown up in. But I think India is poised for growth. Geopolitically, I don't think there's any better time for India right now. It can literally take a leap and be the world leader it is, and then that will start reflecting in world's interest in India, and that will reflect on our real estate, our buildings, and of course facades. With better buildings, we need to put better facades, better thought facades, better design facades.
Gautam, one last question before we go into something which is what we call our rapid fire, what we call our super fast, what we call our Rajdhani questions to you. Having said all that you said and having understood that you've seen the world over and you're highly experienced with your 13 years in Façade from Arup to Inhabit, I won't ask you to go anywhere else and more than that. And do you think that the quality of the facade which one manufactures in India, I'm talking about maybe the top 5, top 6, top 10 companies of this country, okay? Our facades are equivalent to the best of the best or less than the best of the world?
I think they're comparable. I've been to factories pretty much all around the world, potentially not somewhere as far.
Sir. Gautam, sir, I'm interrupting. I'm not talking about factories and infrastructure. I'm talking about the excellence in completion. I'm not talking about designing. Most people in India sit down, pick up one phone call, send it to one consultant, get a set of drawings from abroad, or take somebody from another company, go to a small batch in Bangalore or in Cochin somewhere, get them to draw it, put their logos at the bottom, their own company logos, say that they have the best drawings. Doesn't work. I'm not talking about that. That's all business, what you call engineering. I'm not getting into that. My question is, when you see a manufactured facade, an erected facade, would you call it that they are equal to the best of the best, like let's say Alico or somebody in Dubai, like let's say somebody in Doha, or let's say somebody who gave it to you in Jakarta on a complex building which you just showed some time back? Do you think the Indian facade installation and quality of the best is still there, or we have a lot with? I'm not talking about us personally, I'm sorry, okay? Talking about the industry. Do you think we have to go, or we're already there?
You're there with a lot of projects that I've seen. They are highly comparable with the best of the best in the world. I think when you are shackled with a lot of restrictions, a lot of limitations, that's where I think the gaps start appearing. So I don't think it's the lack of willingness, it's the lack of skills, it's the lack of infrastructure that's holding you back. I think it's basically trying to achieve the best of the best and using that as a benchmark, that this is what I want. I think the industry is really geared up to get there. I don't see there's any.
You're inspiration to everybody. Can you imagine all the fabricators on this show? Can you imagine all the youngsters on this show? I mean, you're like the new mentor. You're like the new dawn of this industry now. People are going to come running to you.
Second to Navin Keswani.
Nobody's second to Navin Keswani. I'm part of the industry. You're part of the consultancy. God has been kind to me. I'm here to host you. Okay, let's get on to a little super fast questions, what we call rapid fire questions, what we call Rajdhani questions. I think you said it all, you summarized it all. Viewers, Gautam has been very candid, very open, very down to earth, and he's also summarized and told us that India is a big market, India is a large market, we have the best facade engineers, and there is room for improvement at the same time. And more importantly, the product that we dish out, the product that we manufacture, the product that we service, that we install are equivalent to the best of the best. Now, he also spoke about the triangle, putting all of them together in a triangle, getting them to perform. And I think it's a very good good afternoon or good evening session that we've had with him. Very, very encouraging. And thank you, Gautam, for that. So I will start off by telling you a big thank you, and thank you to the Zach World of Facades, to Zakir Bhai Waha, to sponsor this show, and all of us come together. So when we come to a rapid fire question, it's more of an interesting question. It's more of a question that where we'd like to take you, and where would you like to take yourself and take us in a very short span of time. If you had this great opportunity of spending your night on this Saturday night with family or friends, who would you prefer?
My answer would have been different before marriage, but definitely family now, because they are also my friends.
That's an Indian answer. It's a good answer. We love you for that, sir. If God gave you another opportunity, or the world gave you another opportunity, now that you're back in India, you're called Swadeshi Gautam sir here. Would you be going back to an overseas company?
I would be in India, I think.
I'm not happy with you. I would hear you'll say you'll take the company global and head it globally from India, man.
Yeah, but I'll still be in India.
We all know that you had a mentor in your life, and you had a couple of mentors, and you worked with the best of the best, what I call them, the best of the best. Fortunately, the three names I'm going to take now are all very close friends of mine, all very, very close friends of mine. And I know that two of them are watching this program today. So would it be Rajan Govind? Would it be Russell Cole? Or would it be Bruce Simons?
Bruce Wymon, you mean? I think, I mean, again, no disrespect to anyone, but I think I sort of enjoyed working with Russell quite exhaustively. And I think amongst the three, I've worked with Russell the longest and the most intensely. Like, I've traveled with him. I've had like evening sit-down sessions over a couple of drinks where we've doodled things, walking to sites, meeting new clients. So I think Russell most certainly.
Russell is Russell. We know that. One can't even go to Singapore and not have lunch with Russell and come back after he takes you to a particular restaurant for fish in the middle of the afternoon. Now he's in the UK, so it's another world. Thank you, sir. My next question. An opportunity. Arup again or Inhabit forever?
I think I picked the best fruits wherever I go. Again, that's human nature. I got to interact and learn with a lot of people, but I'm really happy with the Inhabit space that I'm in right now. There's a lot of agility that I'm being offered. There's a lot of new things that I'm learning about, being client centric, willing to stretch yourself or offer yourself and be very, very specific, or be very orientated towards client needs. So I think Inhabit forever.
Inhabit, super question. Next question, now that we say Inhabit. An opportunity given again to you. Hong Kong, Singapore, Mumbai. You've been all three places.
That's
You've got beautiful buildings done by you independently in Hong Kong. You've got fantastic buildings in Singapore. You've got the two pyramid towers coming up. Hong Kong, Singapore, Mumbai.
Very tough question. Wow. Okay. Work aside, I think let's push work aside. In terms of cities I would love to live in again, it will have to be Hong Kong first, Mumbai a close second, and then Singapore third.
That's like having three children and saying who you love most. I said Hong Kong, Singapore, or Mumbai.
No. So in terms of livability, in terms of places I would love to live in, working, I'm enjoying Mumbai the most. But if I were to choose a place where I don't have to do any work, and I just live there, I go or walk around, eat, I think Hong Kong will be first. Mumbai, a very close second. And then Singapore will be third.
Done. Giving it to you, sir. Next question. You said Inhabit sometime back. So would it be Inhabit forever, or would you strike it out on your own as Gautam Bhasin and Associates?
Like I said,
it's something about ambition, drive, entrepreneurship, and the name Gautam.
Well, I think the only thing that I will have that will change is my name getting added to the company name. I love the Inhabit space I'm in, and I've always been a believer that it's never a one-man show. You have to have a really strong team backing you up. You have to have some really experienced people, getting your back. You can throw a question at 70 people at the same time and get a right answer. So I think I will certainly be pushing Inhabit in the region as far as I can.
Last question. You have an opportunity of working with a builder or a corporate?
Well, okay. That's again, I think, which child is your favorite? That's very similar to the question, because I think I love both. Developers know what they're doing. They understand the consulting process really well. So
They're fast. They're
you
fast.
know what to expect. They move with their decisions really quickly. But I also like, I love talking. So I love educating. I love talking experience and sharing experience and making sure. And I love breaking down complex things for people. So corporates are like people who are into some other business. They don't understand facades. You have to sell it to them saying, hey, here are your 4 options. And then I enjoy that process as well. So I think I need to have a steady mix of both, because sometimes you know that there's another solution that's right for a developer, but then they love doing it a certain way, so you have to like literally work your way up to convince them. But with corporates, I think you improve your communication a lot more, and with developers, you can literally push a solution right through.
Fantastic. Well said, sir. But having said that, with corporates, you definitely improve your communication, your documentation given to you. You get all 7 of them. You get hats off, sir. More importantly, you said that you love talking. I don't think you or anybody in the industry of the facade industry loves talking more than I love talking.
Of course.
So one of the reasons Zakir bhai always tells me, he calls me every time before a show like this, and he says, Keswani, thoda kam bolna aaj. Talk less. But I can't stop. I can't stop.
I have to share a small incidents. I think will be in the last few minutes. A very, very famous architect, a very popular architect who's apparently a very good friend of you as well. He told me off the cuff on a coffee conversation at the side of an event, saying every time I'm feeling low, I'll pick up my phone and call Navin Keswani.
That's what happens. We keep talking. We keep talking.
Booster, but somebody will be like, wow, this is such a happy day.
No, life is good. You got to be positive. You got to stay positive. You got to have good friends. You speak nicely. You speak from your heart. You speak truthfully. It all happens. Thank you so much, Gautam. Thank you for being with us today. Big thank you to you. You are, and I will always say, a very dear friend. More importantly, a very knowledgeable man. I think you come out on the show very candidly, very outright, blatantly, truthfully, honestly, and more importantly, you've said it all. And you have a great career in front of you. You have a great innings to play. Life is a journey. I've always said it. And there's more for it than I can even imagine. But I'd love to work on your first building with the photovoltaic cells. And that is my weakness. And this is a little selfish point of view talking to you. But I think we take this opportunity to thank you to Gautam Bhasin. Thank you for this young architect turned facade consultant, almost an engineer who's detailed in drawings, who's knowledgeable on facades, on GFRC panels, on skylights, on anything and everything, including ceramic and stone. And we also say a big thank you to the sponsors, to Zakir bhai, to Ahad, to the world over, and for this great show that we brought to you, Unmasking the Facade, and today with Gautam Bhasin. Right, sir? Good luck to you. All the best. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.